Hi everyone, welcome back to Cottoverdi. My name's Annette and today I am planning ahead for future seasons. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you around the garden and pick some Sweet Williams, which are called Dianthus barbatus, and I've got loads of different varieties in my garden, and then I'm also going to sow some for next year. So we need to sow them now for them to flower next year. There are one or two varieties that the breeders say that you can sow now, and well, in fact you could have sowed them by April and then they would have flowered this year, but it's now June. So I'm sowing my Sweet Williams in June so that they grow into nice, good plants, substantial plants to put out in my garden in the autumn, and then they will flower next year and in fact for future seasons, because most of them are going to come back every single year. Let me show you the Sweet Williams that I've got in the garden. I just love this view so much, with the gorgeous New Dawn rose in the background, and then there are some foxgloves, and then this lovely pink rose here in the foreground is called Harlow Carr. And then I've got a Sweet William called Newport Pink. There is a rogue white one there, that's just an Alba, but Newport Pink is so pretty and it just goes beautifully with Harlow Carr. I don't know exactly which variety this is. This could be the auricular eye mix. And this is a really big mishmash of all sorts of different beautiful colours. I just adore this velvety one. They are going over slightly, but they're still pretty. So this is just a lovely pink colour. This one's Oceanberg. Now, if you've seen my previous videos, you'll know that I pulled out an entire plant that was this bright scarlet colour, and I clearly missed another plant because I've still got the bright scarlet in my border and I don't want it. It really is so red. It is finally such a lovely day here in the UK that I have decided to sow my seeds outside, even though it's a bit breezy. But the seeds for Sweet Williams are big enough that I think they can withstand the breeze. So if you want to sow Sweet Williams, actually you could kind of sow them all year. So you can start them off indoors, I think from sort of February. Let me check the packets. February, it is February. So you can start them off indoors from February to April, or you can do what I do and kind of start them in early summer. So June or July. I think last year I sowed them in July. I have got a detailed video on my YouTube channel if you want to have a look at that, but I'll go through it today anyway. So it's the middle of June and I'm sowing my Sweet Williams today. You could also sow them in the autumn, sort of September, October time. But it's harder for them to survive that, I find, because they're not necessarily big enough plants. So the reason I like to sow my Sweet Williams in the summer, in fact I sow a lot of my biennials now, is because that gives them a really good chance to get to become substantial plants before they have to go through the winter. Now Sweet Williams are hardy perennials, so they're going to come back every year. So if we plant them out in the autumn, they'll just overwinter really nicely in the ground. But if they're really tiny plants, like small seedlings, it's it's harder for them. Now obviously Sweet Williams are going to self-seed, and they do this quite readily, so you will have little seedlings in your garden that might be a little bit smaller, and they may well go through the winter. But starting seed wise, I find it a lot easier to start them at this time, and then once they're big enough I'll just plant them out in the garden and they will grow on. The reason I sow my Sweet Williams now is because they're not going to flower this year. There are 1 or 2 varieties, the seed packets say that they will flower the first year, but I never rely on that. I sow all of mine in the summer and then just wait for them to flower next year, and I know that they will flower next year and for, you know, seasons to come. Now some of my plants I've had for quite a long time, and they do tend to get a bit leggy and scraggly, so it's nice to sow some more so that we can replace them. And I always like to have loads of Sweet Williams in the garden because they smell so wonderful and they are great cut flowers. And in fact, before they flower, the little green flower heads, are they called flower heads? Little green flower heads actually make really good additions to cut flower displays in the spring, so they go really nicely. The limey green goes really nicely with things like ranunculus. So actually, if you don't mind foregoing some of the Sweet William flowers, they are a perfect addition as foliage in your spring flower displays. I'm using ordinary peat-free multi-purpose compost to sow my seeds. I never use seed compost for this, and in fact you can just sprinkle them in the ground, you know, make a really shallow drill and sprinkle them in the soil in your flower beds if you want to. I tend to sow most of my stuff into seed trays, that's what I like to do. I'm then going to bottom water them, so I haven't pre-moistened my soil, so I will bottom water them and then I will place these in my cold frame and just leave them open to the elements and wait for them to germinate. Now they should germinate in 7 to 21 days, probably 7 to 14 days, but don't give up if they haven't germinated after 14 days. They probably will still germinate, and then, as I said, they're not going to flower until next year. So yeah, it's a little bit of a wait, but it's definitely worth it because I love the scent of Sweet Williams. And in fact, when I was making my display earlier from the ones that I cut, it was just incredible because I also used some I used foliage from a flowering currant, and so I had that sort of black curranty smell along with the lovely smell from the clovey smell from the Sweet Williams, and it was a delight to make that. So I love fragrance, in case you can't tell. So I'm going to tell you which varieties I'm sowing today, and I'll put a little picture up on the screen so you can see what they look like, and then I'll just sow my seeds. I'm going to scatter them on the surface of the compost, and then I will cover them with a thin layer of vermiculite. You don't have to use vermiculite, you could just sprinkle some your light dusting of compost on top, or as I said, make a little shallow drill in the garden and sow your seeds there. The first one I'm sowing is really dark red and it's called Sooty. I think it's also known as Nigrescens or something like that, but it's super dark red. It's really lovely. It grows to about 40 centimeters tall. I'm also sowing an Indian carpet mix, which is just a lovely combination of colors. But the thing to know about the Indian carpet mix, especially if you're growing for cut flowers, is that it's no good for you because it's really short. So it is kind of like carpet height, so it's 15 to 20 centimeters, not even a foot tall, but it comes in a really wide range of colors. My seed packet says shades of pink and red plus white, but I think it's all the colors basically, but just short plants, so really great as a ground cover, something like that. So I'm sowing those this year. I don't think I've sown them before. I'm also sowing something called Hollandia Purple Crown. Now these are mostly purple. They're kind of dark with white bicolours, and they're going to grow to 60 centimetres tall. My seed packets are flying everywhere. So this was a mistake. I should have done this inside. So I long for a greenhouse. So I'm also sowing Albus or Alba. These are the white ones. They've got a tiny little splodge of purple on them, but they're basically white. And I have these at the bottom of my rose arch, and they are glorious in the spring. I love them. They actually need a decent deadheading at the moment. I'm sowing Newport Pink, which is the variety that I have planted with my Harlow Car. It's a fairly good colour match actually. It kind of makes the Harlow Car look like it's going on forever. So that's wonderful, and also obviously the scent outside the kitchen is incredible. So Newport Pink grow to 60 centimetres. Yep, they're definitely 60 centimetres. I'm also sowing one called Cottage Perfume. Now this was a freebie packet that I was sent. I don't know why, I just ordered some seeds and they put this one in it. It says it's got a complimentary packet, and these are predominantly doubles, so that's really good. It just gives you a slightly different sort of texture on the Sweet Williams, so that's cool, and they grow to about 45 centimetres tall. Then I'm saying Oshberg. Now this is one of my favourites because it is a glorious deep purpley violet colour, and it's kind of standout. It's not pink, it's not purple, and it is a really rich, intense colour, so I love this one. The seed packet says it grows to 60 centimetres tall. The last one I'm saying is called Super Duplex Mix. This one was developed especially for the cut flower market apparently, although my seed packet says it only grows to 50 centimetres tall, but it does have a very large percentage, a high percentage of doubles in it, and it comes in the whole range of colours. So those are the 8 varieties I'm sowing today, and I'm just going to get on with scattering these on my seed trays. So Sweet William seeds aren't too small, and I'm going to try and just get 2 into each cell. So these are 8 cell seed trays that I use here, and I really like them because I don't like sowing different varieties all in one seed tray because I find they all germinate at different times, and that can be really annoying. So if my seed packets is a little bit old, I always put the date on it when I receive the seed packets, and this one's from 2021, so if it's a little bit old I'm always going to oversow because the germination rate definitely decreases with the age of most seeds. But that was a bit of a disaster because as I was carrying the trays through to be watered, a massive gust of wind took quite a lot of the vermiculite off the top, and possibly some seeds too. So I don't know how many seeds are still in the trays, but I guess we'll find out in about 2 weeks' time when we see whether anything's germinated. Anyway, I really hope you've had fun with me today. As I said, my Sweet Williams, highly encourage everybody to grow Sweet Williams in their garden. They're super easy and look wonderful, smell wonderful, and great as cut flowers. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.